Tropicana.
Are we going to steal the Devil Rays? Is that what we're doing now?
No.
do we have time? We tried stealing the Saints at one time. We're going to try to do this one. So you're going to see they're going to pop up over here. There are just as many people who watch the show after the broadcast than during it. They can hear us now, by the way.
Yeah, our mics are hot.
Our mics are hot, so you can see us in the corner there. So we
What's up, Sam Salinas?
2.5 minutes. Okay, cool. The occasional first word slips out. So it's just what it is. So we already have Sam Salinas already here.
Yeah, usual will start coming in here shortly. What's up, Tony Hernandez? They still want me to put the Edgar mic on.
No, man, I was here on time. They put the Edgar on the minutes.
Every time he's late, we're going to do this to him.
But I was on time. Get it out.
No, I like the Marbach mop, and we have him in front of Ingram Park Mall.
The number of beats.
What's up, Bain Stain? Alonzo, thanks for joining. Tony Hernandez. Marbach nice.
Yeah, that's a phrase that we've come up with. Marbach nice. Okay. That means
Right. Welcome to another episode of the Alamo City Sportscast with Mike Jimenez and Joe Garcia. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Join the discussion as we broadcast live from beautiful West San Antonio. And remember to tip your hosts as it helps the show grow.
What's up, San Antonio? What's going on, South Texas? This is the Alamo City Sportscast coming at you from the west side of San Antonio. My name's Mike Jimenez. That is Joe Garcia producing today's show. And to my right, we have Mike Mitchell Jr., son of former Spurs legend Mike Mitchell. We're going to have a long conversation today about not only last night's game, Spurs beating Orlando 107-97 in the second preseason game. Everybody's talking about Stephon Castle. We have to get into the conversation. Should he be a day one starter? The season begins 2 weeks from today. The regular season begins 2 weeks from today. Are we going to see Champagne start? Are we going to see Stephon Castle start? Because Castle looked amazing yesterday. We'll get into that conversation. The roof literally got blown off the top of the Tropicana there in Tampa yesterday. Crazy weather out there with Hurricane Milton hitting that coast. I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning. He lives in Tampa. Crazy night that he was talking about, so we'll get into that. We talk sports, we talk pop culture, we talk nostalgia. Joe, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing good, man. I'm glad that we have a really nice guest here in the show with us. Be able to talk Spurs and other things with us, maybe the world of sports. But it's good to have a new face in the studio, man.
It is. Antonio Ornelas already reaching out to us saying, we love the Mitchells. Welcome to the show, Mike. So welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all for having me on today.
So we have this setup here where you can see people who are watching the show right now or leaving their comments. The best ones kind of guide the show. So if anyone has any questions, again, we have more than 1,000 subscribers strong. This podcast got going in January, and we're live on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. You can leave a comment, guide the show a little bit, but we love the fact that you're here today because you are the family, the product of Spurs royalty. And later on in the show, I want to get into whether or not number 34 should be on the rafters, because I have a strong opinion about this. You have not given me your answer about this. I asked you before the show started what you thought, but we want to get into that as well. But last night it was all about Stephon Castle. Joe, Mike, 17 points. And the most impressive thing about it, the dude got to the line for 10 free throw attempts. He made 7 of them, knocked down 2 3-pointers along the way, was just suffocating people defensively, had a couple of steals, but also had like 3 or 4 pokes at the ball, just knocking the ball away. Just looking at the highlights and watching last night's game, man, do you look at Stephon Castle and think, man, this guy should be starting game one?
Well, it's tough for me to say that, right? Because I look at the Spurs history, and I look at Pop's history of playing young players. And typically he likes to get them in slow. He takes that football quarterback approach, right? Yeah. Get somebody good, put them on the bench, let them learn. What he has going for him is the best player on the team is a second-year player, right? So sometimes with a group like that, you want them to grow together, you want them to learn together, you want them to gel together. So he's got that going for him. If he can get out there at Wemby and show what he can do in that lineup, then maybe Pop will adjust the way that he schemes and start him day one. But I mean, I'd be 60-40 that he's going to have to sit on that bench for a little while.
Watching him play last night, he was just stone cold. The guy looked like his blood pressure was so low. His heart rate was so low. It all came natural to him. A lot of times you see these young players go out there and they're just all over the place because the game is too fast for them. He did not appear that way at all. And by the way, my claim to fame on radio, podcasting, whatnot, go back to January of this year, go back to December of last year. I was saying that's a Spur right there. I was in love with Stephon Castle within 2 months of him playing college ball because he has a skill set that fits what the Spurs need. And Pop likes defense. And he was swallowing people up. And I remember draft night, he got interviewed. One of the first questions they asked him was, who are you looking forward to guarding in the NBA? He goes, I want my chance at Luka. I want Luka Doncic in front of me. Just to have that attitude, that swagger. What does that tell you about a player?
Well, first off, be careful what you wish for. I've been on court side when Luka's been out there, and hearing words from opponents, it seems to send him into that next level. When you're quiet, he tends to go. But from a player perspective, you love that, right? You love somebody that wants to take the challenge. You want somebody that wants to step up. Looking at the Spurs throughout the years, one thing that we've always had, we've traditionally had a good big man, and we've had a wing that can play defense, score the basketball, whether it's a 3-and-D guy standing out there in the corner or whether they're slashing, getting to the hole, right? So when you look at that composure that he's showing already, when you look at his skill set, his attributes, you're spot on. He fits what the Spurs want to do. He's a plug-and-play piece, right? Take him out of wherever he was, put him right in there, let him play. He'll be able to do well. So you like what you see. If you called it back then, great. I will admit I go back and forth on the college game, not as into it as I used to be, right? So a lot of times I'm learning through the draft what they're going to do at the highest level. So I didn't see it before. I didn't have the chance to see it as much. But watching him, the little bit that I have summer league, seeing him now in those flashes, he definitely looks like a player that is not only going to fit in, but can make his mark on that team.
Stephon Castle just has the energy, man. He changes the flow of the game, not only offensively, but defensively. And I'm taking a look at one of the dunks that he had in the first preseason game. Okay, this is our future point guard.
Yeah.
We looked at this, Joe, and we said Trey Jones could never.
All
due respect for Trey Jones. We love him. He's going to have a 10-year career. Yeah. He's going to make a lot of money, generational wealth for his family.
Right.
But he ain't that guy.
Right.
Castle's 6'6", 6'6.5". Dude is still growing.
But how young is he, though? He's still young, man.
I think he's 19 still.
He's got that hops, man.
That's true.
When you get older, man, you don't want to get off the ground that much.
And I loved Keldon Johnson's reaction to this. By the way, this was brought to you by Bally Sports. Goodness, man. And you just look at Stephon Castle play. And we talk about how the Spurs have Chris Paul III. We finally got to see Chris Paul yesterday in a Spurs jersey. It was a little bit awkward. Played 23 minutes, had 5 points on 2 of 4 shooting, 2 rebounds, had 3 assists and 2 steals. But his job is to get the ball to Wemby. Wemby had an off night shooting, but we're looking at Chris Paul. Chris Paul, a few years ago, played point guard for Oklahoma City for 1 year. Shooting guard was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I think that's what they're going to do with Stephon Castle. By the way, Tavarius reaches out to us on our YouTube stream and says, "Trade Devin Vassell. I've seen enough."
Yeah.
Are we going too far, too fast?
Too far. If I could, right there, Vassell, skill-wise, might be the most polished, talented player on the team.
Yeah.
Right. This is from a perspective of seeing him practice. Right. The only question mark for me is that injury. those injuries. Can he stay healthy? People have yet to see his full potential. Trust me. I know in today's game, usually at 21, they're a polished player right there in their prime because the guys are starting out so young. But trust me, he's still got some room. The issue just is availability is the most important part. Can he stay on the court?
Right.
If he can, then yeah. If you trade him and he gets healthy and goes somewhere else, he's scoring 25 a game.
Could be, yeah.
He's shooting high 30s, maybe 40s from the 3-point line.
But you get 60 games from him.
That's the issue, right? That's the issue.
And it's a foot injury, and that's the one thing you don't want to hear. When your feet go bad, there's something wrong. And by the way, he's on this roster, Devin Vassell, till 2029. His contract is barely getting started.
And these comments, dude, in this chat.
What's going on? Kelvin Sue was brought to you by Solo Serve South Park Ball Edition. Brutal, man. I actually kind of liked it, man. Joined by Mike Mitchell Jr., son of San Antonio royalty, Mike Mitchell, who number 34, played for the Spurs mostly in the 80s. Was a big fan of your dad. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Stephon Castle coming off the bench for a second preseason game. Julian Champagny starting for a second game. Is Pop setting the signal that maybe Castle is the sixth man?
I think so. And listen, that's not a bad spot to be in on the Spurs, right? One of my all-time favorite players, Manu Ginobili, got in that role and loved it. Do I think that that's the end? No, I think that that's just setting the stage for him for being the sixth man, Castle being the sixth man for a year, maybe two at most, and before he moves into the starting lineup. It could even be halfway through the season, right? Depending on his development. But that's not a bad place to be in. It's who's finishing the game, right? So I could see him coming in, learning early. By game 30, 35, he could be one of the five out there finishing the game, depending on how the flow of the game's going. So it's not a bad spot to be in San Antonio.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Castle a little bit here because I'm looking at Castle and I've been watching the preseason, even watch Summer League and whatnot. And I'm looking at Castle and I was like, okay, I want to see what this kid's going to do. He's high pick in the draft, 4th overall pick, has high accolades, as far as his basketball IQ, hard worker. I'm like, hey, he sounds like a Spur already. Then he gets some playing time and you get to see first game in preseason. You're like, hey, man, this kid is going to be something already, seeing little flashes. See the second preseason game out there. And I see this kid and I'm like, he's a great defender, man. You look at him and he has high energy. He gets up and down the court with ease. He's a great defender. He's very composed for his age. He can shoot, speed, athleticism, everything you want out of a basketball player, you're getting in this young man. And doesn't play like a rookie. I'm kind of getting sold already on Stephon Castle, even though it's just preseason. I like everything I'm seeing out of this kid, and I think he's going to make a hard case for himself for Coach Pop. He's going to be forced to give him some run because the kid is going to make a name for himself. He's showing right now that he's willing to outwork anybody out there on the court, and I think that's a good thing.
Now he is a star in the making. I'm sorry. We are seeing a star in the making because the guy can play both sides of the ball. I'm trying to figure out. Imagine this. This is how you know he's a star in the making. We have Wemby on this team, and everyone's talking about Castle today. Wemby, who had an off day shooting yesterday, missed all 5 3-point attempts, all that stuff. I get it. But we have a guy over here that we're looking at that might be the Robin to Wemby's Batman. That is the whole point of it all. And we have a $10 super chat, and I'm going to get into this, okay? Because Drew Show has just pitched in $10.
Yeah.
Because he wants to jump in front of the line. It's like a jukebox, okay? If you throw some money in our direction, we're going to go there. So he says, Mitchell, don't let Jimenez fool you. He says Spurs getting CP3 instead of drafting Reed Shepherd or a player like Dillingham or Salon was a punt. He also forgets Kid played the point guard in his 40s and CP is the oldest. Okay, so the thing about it is, let me backtrack a little bit about that, right? CP3 is not the oldest point guard of all time, but the most number of years played. He's the first point guard to ever have a 2 in number of years played because it's 20 years now that he's been in the league. I said 2 things when the Spurs got Chris Paul III. I said the Spurs punted on the season. Okay. The reason why I said they said they punted on the season was because that signaled that they were not going to go after Lauri Markkanen.
Mm-hmm.
That signaled the end of the Trae Young rumors,
Mm-hmm.
and the Spurs ended up getting Harrison Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
I have said that this is a developmental year. The Spurs will win more games, not make the play-in tournament, but will win more games. But this is a signal to the fans that we're not going to make the playoffs this year because we're just developing our guys. And I said that the CP3 pickup was a punt, but probably a good punt because, as we mentioned with SGA, he helped mentor him as well, and he's now one of the best point guards in the league. Was it wrong to say that the Spurs punted on this season, or is it basically the developmental year that I say that it is?
Can I sit on that fence, right? Listen, I'm not going to say they punted, right? Because you have an obligation to keep Wemby happy. Right. And thing that you have to consider is that he's won since he was 12 years old, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe not the championships, but he's been around finals every year, right? So he's used to that. A player like that, you can't continue to lose in the NBA and think he's going to be happy. Right. So you don't want to just punt with a player like that. You have to keep growing. Right. So you have to win 40 games. You have to win 50 games, consecutive years. But I also think when you look at the roster from last year, it was a glaring hole at that point guard position. We tried some experiments. Trey Jones, like you said, he's serviceable, but is he the point guard that's going to lead you to that next level? Or would you rather him be the backup floor general coming off the bench, right? In my opinion, nothing against him, but you'd rather him be in that role. So I was expecting the Spurs to go out and get either somebody to play alongside Wemby or that point guard that they desperately need. When they got the mentor / coach, I said, okay, Pop's trying to make his job easier, right? You get Chris Paul to go coach the team on the floor. You don't get him necessarily at this point in his career to lead you to a championship. So I do think that he's there to develop. The Spurs had that winning culture for years and years and years. And I'm not trying to say it's changed, right? But you've got a whole brand new set of guys, some of them that weren't even playing basketball when Tim was out here dominating the league. Right. So you've got to get somebody out there that's in it with them, that can show them the right way to go, that winning culture. And so that's why I think they went out and got Chris Paul. You wanted somebody that could understand the flow of the game, that could get Wemby the ball when he needs to, teach others how to do it. So yeah, they are going to be developing that this year. And then hopefully Castle will step into that lead role, and the following year they'll be going after a championship.
I think it's easier for Chris Paul to identify with these players. I have been very vocal, not just this year, the year before that. I've been very vocal that the Spurs should have moved on from Pop.
Mm-hmm.
He is 75 years old.
Oh no!
I threw out the stat. I threw out the stat yesterday that this has got to be a record for the most combined years of age between point guard that starts and head coach. It's 115.
Yeah,
it's 115.
Yeah.
So I think that Chris Paul's great being there because all the players that are there are basically between the ages of 20 and 26.
Mm-hmm.
Their entire formative lives, they've seen Chris Paul out there on the court playing at a Hall of Fame level. I think that's great. But your take on Pop, how many more years do you want of Pop?
Okay, so this is tough, right? This is recorded.
We're going on record.
It's out there.
The Spurs put food on my table. I am not second guessing the Spurs at any turn in my life. Pop was around when my dad was finishing out his NBA career, because he went overseas for several years. And it is funny that he's still sitting on that bench. A few years back, when he had that talk of, when Tim leaves, I'm leaving. Like I said, I have the ability sometimes to go into the practice facility, and I could see him slowing down a little bit then. And I thought it was true. Life happens. We all understand that things changed in his life, unfortunate circumstances. Yeah. And so your passion gets reignited sometimes because you need something to do, right? That fire comes. Then you've got these young guys coming up, and it's like, oh, I've got some new guys I have to teach now, right? I can't keep it in cruise control, right? I've got to get out there and start coaching again. So that flame got ignited. How long that stays, I don't know. When I hear folks saying that it might be time for a difference, I might not change. I might not be as vocal as I used to be. So I'm not saying I agree with you, but I'm also not disagreeing with you. That maybe if a different voice did step in, and of course with the basketball mind like Pop, you put him back in the front office, you let him go get the talent, right, but you let somebody else do the right thing on the court with them.
I didn't see the wink, but I felt it.
You know what? I say let Coach Pop coach this team, because I understand, He's earned that right. When he calls it quits, that's up to him. It's not up to you.
Dude,
you can hate on him as much as you want.
Landry.
Tom Landry's check.
Tom Landry's ass was shown the door, man. Jerry Jones bought the Spurs and bought the Cowboys and showed that Hall of Famer.
You couldn't that check?
Dude, no fan cuts a check. No player cuts a check.
You're giving an opinion, but the thing is, at the end of the day,
that's weird. The opinion business.
Who you got though? Who's gonna go ahead and take the helm once he leaves?
Dude, what experience head coaching did Pop have before he became a head coach?
You haven't answered the question.
That was the last.
Who's going to be the next head coach?
Dude, he has had 8 go through. He's had Ime Udoka go through.
But
He's had Will Hardy go through. He's had Becky Hammond go through.
Give me a name.
He's had championship coaches.
Give me a name. Who's going to be the next head coach?
It's probably going to be Mitch Johnson. And I would love that. A young guy who was Joe Mazzulla is in his 30s. Ime Udoka is in his 40s.
Mike always stepping on that soapbox to hate against Coach Pop. I bet you when they go and they give him his flowers, you're going to be there crying, shedding a tear.
Dude.
Clapping.
He was already at his own funeral, dude. He already saw himself get inducted to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. I mean, come on, man. That's like a 10-year-old funeral.
What if this team gets worse when he leaves? Then what are you going to say?
Then what, 22 games?
I miss me some Coach Pop.
Then 22 wins? Can't be much worse than now. Can't be much worse than now. Man. Okay, the Spurs are going to get better because they have better talent. They have Harrison Barnes coming on in. We got to see Harrison Barnes out there, 2 points in 21 minutes yesterday. Jeremy Sohan had a big game yesterday. 20 minutes played, made 5 out of 6 shots. Got to the free throw line, made both of them, had 12 points. Champagny showing more than just cardio out there. That's my nickname for him. He's Mr. Cardio. He's out there getting Fitbit steps and everything. But the whole line about like who's next, there's not one 5-time champion coach that's going to come in. That's not the point. The point is to change the culture. If the Houston Texans right now in the NFL had a choice between DeMeco Ryans and Bill Belichick, they would take DeMeco Ryans all day, every day. Bill Belichick, how many rings he got? Where's he coaching right now? He's never going to coach again. If Pop was to be let go today, how many franchises would hire him? None. It's because the time has passed. Dude, we could have this conversation 5 years from now. He could be 80 years old, and he'd be like, well, he has 5 rings.
We have a guest on the show today, and we're talking about Coach Pop.
Hire him as an exec.
Exactly, man. I didn't say treat about old yeller him like Jerry Jones did to Tom Landry. Take him out back and just shoot him in the back of the head in the shed. What I'm saying is just kick him to the front office.
Yeah,
give him something to do. Give him an office.
The thing that they were bringing up is that Mike was saying that, with the signing of CP3, it was a sign that the Spurs were going to punt this season. And I was like, no, it's a sign that they want to bring in some veteran leadership to help this young core. And if you look what happened in yesterday's game, if that was last season, this Spurs team probably would have lost that game. But with the veterans out there, what happened? They kept on chipping away at that lead. The Spurs were losing the game for most of the 3 quarters. Then it started making a push. Got it down to 3, got it down to 1. Then they finally took the lead. And it was just composure. It wasn't them losing their composure and getting overly excited. They played composed and they played smart basketball down the stretch without making those little mistakes that cost them games last season.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I want to piggyback off that and ask you this question about going back to Castle. You said that Castle might be the anchor of the second string, right? Because someone's got to be the 6th man. What we saw yesterday when they were chipping away was actually great 2-man play, not with another big guy of Wemby, but it was actually Mamu. When you see Mamu out there, what is he bringing to this team that maybe a Zach Collins doesn't bring, or another big guy on the team is not doing? What is Mamu doing right?
Energy. He fights.
My man, that's the same thing I thought.
Fights. Like when you watch him sitting courtside, you get an appreciation, right? You watch the stats sometimes and you see and you're like, do we even need to keep a guy like him around, right? If you're just looking at that box score. But then you get a chance to see him live and he just fights. And he's got a unique skill set, right? Because he catches it out there and it doesn't look normal with him at the 3-point line.
Right.
But he can let it go. He can space the floor and he can knock him down. Then he goes and he bangs, whether they're 6'8" or 7'2". If you put him on him, he tries his best to defend. He just play, and you love it, right? And you respond to that. And this is San Antonio. Let's be real. Fans out here love guys like that.
What is his player comp? I see Mamu and I'm thinking, is he a shorter Vlade Divac? Who is he out there?
You know what? That's actually a pretty decent analogy right there, right?
Yeah, I was just watching this game because I look at certain players. Wemby is Kareem and Kevin Durant combined, right? You have Stephon Castle, who I see as worst case scenario Drew Holiday, best case scenario Tyrese Maxey. You know, is he a Tyrese Maxey? Is he a Jimmy Butler type of guy? That's it. That's exciting to. We've been asking who's the second guy on this team. It might be him. But when you see the player comps out there, when you see Mamu out there, when you see Stephon Castle, who do you see of all the years of watching basketball? Who do you see them looking like out there?
Whew, that's tough. Trying to think of athletic guards.
May not even have to be a guard because he reminded me a lot of Kawhi yesterday.
Well, I started with Castle. Well, yeah, I get where you're seeing that, right?
Two-way player,
yeah. Doesn't show a lot of emotion either way, right? He's not getting too high, he's not getting too down.
Wait a minute, this is scary. Does he have an uncle? Is there an Uncle Dennis? Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Oh goodness, let's keep random bigs feet out of his way. We don't want any injuries happening there. I'm thinking back. I'm thinking about some of the New York guards because my thoughts go way back, like a Starks type player.
Okay,
he can give you that two-way play, has that defensive ability, can play point or shooting guard, right? Of course, Starks had a little bit more attitude, a little bit more demonstrative on the court. But I'm thinking a player like that where if you need him to go get 30, he can. But if he's got to fit beside somebody else that's going off, he'll get you 15, but he'll get you 2-3 steals. He'll get you a block shot in there, right? Get you some rebounds.
How about this as a player comp? Joe Dumars.
Joe Dumars is a good one as well. More athletic Joe Dumars.
There you go. There you go. Talking to Mike Mitchell Jr., son of Mike Mitchell, former Spurs legend, number 34 back in the 80s, one-time All-Star, amazing player. We'll get into that in a moment.
Look at JHNSB. Mamu is a modern-day Channing Frye, Rashad Lewis.
Yeah. Although Rashad Lewis, I don't know that he was for a few years in there. He was serious. He was a problem.
Some of these comments that we get are actually pretty good. I mean,
yeah,
we get some pretty good ones. Now, one name that we didn't call up was Jeremy Sohan. We mentioned that he was 5 for 6 yesterday. Sohan played well yesterday. I'll give him his flowers. I'll give him his flowers.
He's the notorious Sohan hater.
No,
he does not like Jeremy Sohan at all.
He's been out of position a lot, in my opinion, but that's just me.
I like Jeremy Sohan as a player because he does a lot of the things that go unnoticed.
Yep.
He's not out there for his offensive prowess, which Mike is always crapping on all the time.
No, my thing about Sohan is that there's certain players out there, Derek White being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You put them on a bad team, they're not going to lift that bad team up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you put them on a good team,
they're the gel.
They make a good team great.
Right.
Okay. They put gasoline on top of it because what do? They do the little things, but little things matter most to good teams, right? Because if you're able to do the little things, that means somebody else is shooting the ball. That means somebody else is rebounding. That means somebody else is doing stuff. You can focus on being a lockdown defender. So as this team gets better, I think Jeremy Sohan is going to be taking leaps because they're getting better around him. It's not because he improved his talent or anything like that. It's just a better fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
On a bad team, Jeremy Sohan ain't it. On a decent to good team, you might lift that team up.
All right. Well, on a bad team, little things don't matter as much because they're not right on the cusp, right? On a bad team, if it gets close in the fourth quarter, you have to worry about everybody making a turnover. You have to worry about the whole team. They're not diving on the floor because they're looking at that record like, I'm trying to get home to my family. I'm collecting that paycheck. I'm not risking it to go out there, and we're still losing. On a good team, that guy's going to get out there on the floor if he's a Sohan type player because he knows this might be the difference in us winning this game. Right. Yeah. This might mean the difference. And players have egos, but they also realize what their worth and their value is. On a bad team, a guy like that is worth what, $3 million nowadays?
Yeah.
Still a lot of money, but that same guy is worth $10 million on a good team now.
Yeah.
because he's indispensable, right? And you can go to the highest level of that out in Golden State, looking at Draymond Green. Nowhere else in America would he have been that type of player. Right?
Thank you for saying that. I said the exact same thing yesterday. I said Draymond Green is not Draymond Green without Steph and Clay
100%.
and Kevin Durant.
Clay is gone now.
You need to have that type of player being the icing on the cake, not the cake itself.
No. You put him somewhere else. He's not an all-star.
No, not at all. Spurs are going to go have another game at the Frost Bank Center on Saturday against the Utah Jazz. Then they wrap up the preseason against the Miami Heat and Houston Rockets before beginning the season. I believe it's October 24th, which is 2 weeks from today. Spurs going to have to make some moves at some point, drop certain players,
make roster spots, man.
Roster spots. With Stephon Castle coming to this team, and he's a Swiss Army knife. You want to put him at 1? Put him at 1. You want to put him at 2? Put him at 2. Maybe at the 3 from time to time, 6.5.
We do have an incoming
we can make it happen.
super chat here from
Shout
Mario.
out to Club Rio's Danny Green retirement.
Thanks, Mario Cavazos.
Making it rain, baby. So who's the odd man out? Because yesterday we saw Blake Wesley, first round draft pick out of Notre Dame. We saw Malachi Branham, first round draft pick out of Ohio State. Both have shown flashes. Last season, that February, Malachi Branham was on fire. Blake Wesley has shown from time to time flashes of being a very, very competent guard. He's just been getting injured from time. It's hurting his ability to take minutes. Who is he pushing out? Who is Stephon Castle pushing out of this team?
That's a hard one.
Is it Trey Jones?
I don't know if it's Trey Jones, because the only reason is towards the end of last year, right? When they finally started turning it around, he had some big games at the right moment. And y'all know in this league, it matters, right? So it's hard because that memory is still there. Like, who does he push out? Unfortunately, I've had the privilege of being who gets pushed out in summer league and different things like that,
right? And
seeing it, and it's hard. That's when you see the politics of basketball, right? That's when contracts come into play. That's when endorsement deals come into play. Like, who's got to be out there? Who's got, who do we have to think of? Who do we have to consider? Who do we have to keep happy? Who's not going to settle for those minutes? And that's tough, right? When you look at that squad, because I even think of, I even look at Keldon, right? Are they going to hold on to him?
Man, I forgot about Keldon.
He was an Olympian.
He's a gold medalist who averaged like 19 points per game.
He was an Olympian. A few years back, his face was everywhere.
Look at this, Mike. We got another $1.99 super chat from Midtown, Texas. Look what he says.
Mike acted real different. Which Mike?
He's talking about you. You.
What? I can evolve.
No.
I can evolve.
No.
Okay, so Spurs start the regular season against the Dallas Mavericks on the road. Then a weird thing. It's a back-to-back home game against the Houston Rockets on Saturday the 26th and on Monday the 28th, and they go on the road, take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Spurs right now are, according to Vegas odds, expected to win 35 games. That's what they're going with. Spurs have the ability to have up to 4 first-round draft picks. We have our own. We have Atlanta's unprotected, Chicago's top 10 protected, and the Charlotte Hornets top 14 protected. That Charlotte one ain't gonna ever happen. But the Bulls one, possibly. What we're cheering for is a leap from Wemby. We're cheering for a leap from Sohan. From Castle to be a good player. We're also cheering for, I don't know, injury bug to the Atlanta Hawks. I don't know.
Look who's in the chat right now. A good friend of the show,
Sean
Sean.
Quintero. What's going on, my man? Sean Quintero hooking this up very much, man.
Yeah, he says you need to work your way back into the circle.
Okay.
He's got his feelings hurt.
Got his feelings hurt?
Yeah. You need to show up to a UTSA tailgate.
I got a girlfriend. I disappeared.
You know how that happens, right?
It is what it is, baby. It is what it is. Bros before hoses in high school, but not in real life as an adult. Talking to Mike Mitchell Jr. Before we go to a conversation about your dad, let's give some love to Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs and Ken's 5 for that daily Spurs coverage.
Locked On Spurs is your daily Spurs podcast, hosted by Jeff Garcia, the lead Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Jeff has a healthy plethora of guests all the time on the Locked On Spurs podcast. You can also follow Jeff on threads at Jeff G Ken's 5 SA. You can also follow Jeff on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone. So make sure you go ahead and give Jeff a follow, not only on Threads and Twitter, but also on YouTube at youtube.com/@LockedOnSpurs. This is where you're going to be able to find the replay of the Locked On Spurs podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.
That's right. I subscribe on Spotify. I subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow him on kens5.com at Jeff G Spurs Zone, taking a look at what he's working on today. Not only is he going to have his daily podcast of Locked On Spurs, but he also has an article on kens5.com about how the Spurs official fan shop is opening up. The grand opening has been announced at the Rocket La Cantera. Also talking about Danny Green announced that he has retired. So that's what they were referring to there by the retirement party for Danny Green. Danny Green, former Spur, who should have been the 2013 NBA Finals MVP, has retired. Okay, so this is going to dovetail into two conversations. By the way, Jeff Garcia is also going to be the MC, and he's going to be hosting a lot of the panels at the Comic-Con event this weekend that Joe will be attending as well.
On Saturday.
Danny Green. Okay, so let's talk about Danny Green. Yes or no, retire his jersey as a Spur?
No.
If he was Finals MVP, would it have been retired?
Possibly.
That was his to win, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Ray Allen misses that shot in the corner.
It's a whole different ball game.
If Pop had put, I don't know, Tim Duncan in the lineup on that last play to get maybe a rebound or block the inbounds pass, revisionist history. I know. But Danny Green's one of those Hall of very good players for this team.
Right.
Right. Patty Mills, retire his jersey or no? Decade with the team.
You know I'm going to be biased on this, right? There's a missing jersey up there, so it's a no again for me.
Let's go to that, because your dad, Mike Mitchell. I will say this, man. I grew up. I'm born in 1977, right? So I'm 47 years old. Your dad entered the league with the Cleveland Cavaliers back in 1978. Man, when I was 1 year old. Goes to the Spurs in 1981. I'm 4. Becoming a sports fan at that point, right? Dude, the lineup of Alvin Robertson and Mike Mitchell and Johnny Moore, Gene Banks and Artis Gilmore and George Gervin and all those players. I mean, we remember they had a winning culture for a while there. Made it to the Western Conference Finals, got knocked out by Magic and Kareem and all those guys in 6. Your dad at number 34, that 34 jersey, I'm looking at the points per game that he averaged for the Spurs. He played for the Spurs, what, like 8 seasons?
7.5 seasons.
7.5 seasons. He averaged for the Spurs 21, 20, 23, 22, 23.5, 13, and 13.5. You add it all together. He was a 20-point per game guy. He was 3rd in all-time Spurs scoring when he retired. He is 7th now because Tim Toney and Manu leapfrogged him along with David Robinson. Did the Spurs overlook your dad when it comes to retiring jerseys?
I think so, right? Of course, I carry that Mitchell last name, right? But hear me out. Those stats that you just threw out there. Spurs getting the prominence was on the back of George Gervin, right? So you think about how many years he spent. The only person that played with George Gervin to lead the Spurs in scoring other than George Gervin was Mike Mitchell, right? You just threw out a list of great names. All those jerseys are up there. But I also think about the fact that the Spurs are a community team, right? They've always been a community team. They're great in the community. They're a first-class organization. And my dad was also that, right? He retired here, had the opportunity to go back to play for the Boston Celtics, wouldn't do it because of his love for the Spurs. He's like, no way am I going to do that. Magic and them kept him from winning a championship twice. Right? Had they not had that team out there, I'm sure the Spurs would have won 2 championships back there in the day. And he was an integral part of that. And there's nobody else that has his accomplishments whose jersey isn't up there. I even look at some of the ones that are up there. I will keep their name off the podcast today, but I don't know if they're that same player had they not played alongside George Gervin and Mike Mitchell. Listen, it's in my opinion, it's easier to have assists when you've got guys that are scoring at that high a clip, shooting the ball at 45 plus percentage points every season, right?
There was one season where your dad averaged a point more per game than George Gervin did in his prime. I mean, Mitchell was at 22 and a half, 23 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
Gervin was at 22 that year. Looking at the all-time career scores for the Spurs, Tim Duncan obviously at number 1, George Gervin at 2, David Robinson at 3, Tony Parker 4, Monty Ginobili 5. Then we get through 6 through 10. James Silas, your dad, Mike Mitchell, Sean Elliott, Larry Keenan, LaMarcus Aldridge. Mike Mitchell has the highest number of points of any Spur that is not hanging on the rafters right now.
100%.
And it wasn't that way when he retired, because when he retired, Duncan wasn't there yet. When he was retired, Robinson wasn't there yet. Well, Robinson wasn't there, and Parker wasn't there, and Monty wasn't there. He was the 3rd career scorer all time. And it's not like he played for 2 seasons. He played for 7.5 seasons.
Right.
They should have hung up his jersey a long time ago. Why did Terry Cummings have it? I was offended when Terry Cummings was wearing that jersey.
Yeah.
It was a Terry. He was wearing 34.
Yes, he was.
Pissed me off.
Yes, he was.
You know, they have Avery Johnson's jersey retired there in the rafters.
Well, Avery Johnson hit that 14-foot jumper on the left-hand side, 99.
Let's not sugarcoat it. Winning championships means something, right? Winning championships
but I'm saying,
something.
I think Mike Mitchell's jersey deserves to be raised to the rafters.
Well,
it does.
I have, and this is getting to the conspiracy side, right? So San Antonio's a small market team, right? And this is before all the TV deals helped infuse money in there. And at the time he retired, it was kind of like, okay, we've got to be cautious. We're only going to retire certain jerseys. We're not going to be LA. We're not going to be Boston Celtics and have 35, jerseys in the rafters. So I think timing, right, affects everything. So I do think at the time before they started putting a lot of those names in there, they were being ultra cautious. And then they have this explosion where we're winning championships. We're doing stuff where we've got to put some jerseys in the rafters, right? So they go back and they don't put up people that don't deserve it. I'm not saying take somebody's down, right? But they put up a certain amount, and then it's like, now we've got to rein it in, right? My dad was never very boisterous. He wasn't going to pound his chest. He wasn't going to be out there. He wasn't going to do stuff. A lot of people didn't even know when he had his nonprofit here that it was his until they came out, right?
Wow.
They went to see a nonprofit in town that was working with children, and they're like, Mike Mitchell, what are you doing here? He's like, this is my nonprofit. And so I think that low key, fan favorite, people love him. People see me walking down the streets. They look at me sometimes, and I can tell when they turn their head to the side, I'm like, oh, I know it's coming. They see my father, right? So so the fans loved him. I don't think that there'd be any problem with his jersey being up there, but it might have just been a timing issue. And it's hard to go back now and be like, oh man, as an organization, we missed that one. Let's put him up there now.
And they missed out when he passed away in 2011.
We do have another super chat incoming here.
Oh yeah. So says Mr. Mitchell. You're meeting Jimenez's representative today, not the acquired taste. By this time, he has said wilder things, and Belichick is unhireable. Apparently, they're saying I'm behaving today.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on his best behavior.
I'm on my
today,
best
man.
behavior.
I don't know who this is.
Okay,
right here.
so the sometimes I go on rants, and you hear him on the sideline going, because I'm melting down, and everyone's like, check his blood pressure.
He's pounding the table.
I'm pounding the table. He should have retired 5 years ago. Yeah, I go back to the. Was it the movie Big Daddy, where the old man was there? What they say that he has a 5-year game plan. They said that about Pop, and I was like, remember the movie Big Daddy? 5-year game plan, was it not to die? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Anyway,
you got another super chat coming here from the Drew Show, man.
If Johnny's 00 retired, so should number 34.
So my dad and Johnny were actually really good friends. I used to spend a lot of time at Johnny's house. First memories and doing stuff, and I will say that I mentioned a player that I wasn't going to put on blast earlier, but since the name was out there, Johnny knows he's my guy. He is actually one of my first coaches, because Mike Mitchell was just dad at 5 and 6 years old, so Johnny had to be the one to come help me with basketball. But yeah, it's easy to rack up assists when you're playing with 2 20-point scorers.
So do we need to tell Mike over here the tall tale of Johnny Moore?
Man.
I think I'm partially responsible for Johnny Moore's jersey being up there.
Okay.
Oh man.
So
look at that. He don't even believe you too. I want to see this.
Back in 96 and 97, I was a producer of a TV show in San Antonio called Instant Replay.
I
with
remember.
Greg Simmons, David Sears, Cordell Patrick. I did on my own. Now they voiced it, but I'm the one who reported on it. A retrospective on Johnny Moore, and about whether or not his jersey should be retired.
Mm.
And I asked him if it should be retired. He said yes, that would be a dream come true, all that stuff. We aired it on Sunday night at 10:30 because that's when Instant Replay came on. 2 or 3 days later, Spurs made the announcement that his jersey was going to be retired.
It is your fault. 34 would be up there if you hadn't.
and no one here believes me when I say that.
So I will add some fuel to that debate, some fuel to that fire. I do think sometimes, and shout out to Johnny, he had to overcome a lot, right? Stemming from not being sure where he was going to go to college to working his way into a starting point guard at UT, University of Texas. Walked away from the game because of illness, right? A lot of times people, go off and ride into the sunset, and he fought his way back. He had to overcome a lot, right? So taking nothing from there. But I do think that played a part in him getting his jersey retired, not just his accomplishments on the court.
Yeah. Desert fever. I'd never heard of it before. Had never heard of it after. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know anybody who's had desert fever. Right. What does that mean? But I explained to people back in the day, before cable TV was a really big thing, we would watch Sports Center. Mm-hmm. And if you were local in sports, you'd watch Instant Replay.
Right.
And I happened to be, that's how I got my start, was being Greg Simmons's, You're
going to tell him when Greg Simmons threw the phone at you?
Yeah, Greg Simmons threw a phone at me. It was one of those ones you pick up like this, and he chunked it at me with all his strength, right? And he threw it at me, and I'm yelling at him in the newsroom. It was kind of like Anchorman when Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone go at it. It was like that, but it was two dudes. Good times, man. Good times. And Cordell Patrick being smooth out there, just looking at it, going, I'm going to be over here.
Right.
I don't know if you remember Cordell.
Mm-hmm.
Cordell, man, he had that bad bus accident last year. Was it a bus? No, it was a RV accident last year that he's recovering from. But shout out to Cordell Patrick.
You know who else we need to give a shout out to?
Who's that?
MCS General Contracting.
You're wearing the gear.
MCS General Contracting, more than 30 years of combined experience in concrete placement. They are the best in the business. Honest pricing, high quality work. They get going on house foundations, driveways, concrete patio decks. If you want to extend the deck, extend the driveway. If you're a business and you need to put together a slab, a parking lot, or other concrete placement services or sidewalks, reach out to MCS General Contracting at 210-774-9155. They're confident in their skills, so give Chris Leha over at MCS General Contracting a call at 210-774-9155. And thank you for being a sponsor of this show.
Again, we call that concrete what?
The Diamond Hard Concrete. You want to get that Diamond Hard Concrete in your life? Got to call MCS General Contracting. Give my boy Chris Leha a call. And he'll also go ahead and give you a free consultation. And they could do anything from patios to landings like they did for Mike's yard there.
Yeah, they did a sidewalk
parking
on the side
lots,
of my house,
pools, you name it. So
slabs, pickleball courts, basketball courts. They do it all. MCS General Contracting. They've been with us since day one. Joined by Mike Mitchell Jr. Your dad played for the Spurs for 7.5 seasons, was a one-time All-Star over at Cleveland. Had a great career. We talked about the fact that he was here for so long and loved by so many. Being a son of an NBA player, how old are you right now?
I'll be 43 next week.
Okay, so basically, when he was joining the Spurs,
I was born.
You were born. So what's it like being the son of an NBA player? Not only an NBA player, but a longtime NBA player who had a successful career.
Well, when you're first born, you just think that your dad's really popular, right? Because life and as that's just your dad. And then you start going places as I start moving into school, and all of a sudden all the kids wanted to be my friend, right? Automatically I show up day one because their parents are like, oh, that's Mike Mitchell's son, right? So it means something to them. And everyday things until you can start realizing how the world comes, you just take for granted, right? I remember telling people as a kid, like police officers were the best folks on Earth, right? And planet Earth, because they pull my dad over, they make sure that his speed is okay, and they let him go, right? He doesn't get any tickets, and they come get me at the Hemisphere game. Shout out to the old Hemisphere with the yellow seats and the popcorn smell and the beer smell.
Oh, and you can't forget the obstructed view.
Oh, I didn't have to deal with that. I remember those pillars on the side, and I turned and looked, and I'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. But I love those. I love that arena though. It's still my favorite memories.
It's my favorite as well.
It's just sticks with me, right? But those things, right? They'd come get me out of the stands and take me back into the locker room, which looks nothing like today's locker room. There might have been cigarettes on the side, might have been some beer over there, right? Things that you'd never see in today's locker room, but people back then didn't know, right? And so as a kid, those things to me were just natural until I started getting a little older, right? And realizing when I was at that park and that mob of 20 people came up to talk to my dad why they were doing it.
Yeah.
The perks of being an NBA child, right? They didn't make as much money as today's NBA, but things also weren't as expensive. So I was the kid in the back of a Porsche telling dad to not let anybody pass him on the highway. And that was normal to me, right? Getting invited to dinners, galas, seeing political figures coming up, to me, that was just a way of life. Like, a couple times a year, you go out to these big banquets and mayor or a governor would come up and, hey, I'm a big fan of yours. And, dad would say, okay, well, help us out this year. Right. Things like that. And even as he finished his career, he went overseas for years. I tell people it was taken for granted at the time a little bit, but I sat with dukes and princesses, and I'm sitting at these table in a I'm 14 years old in a tuxedo sitting at a table, not realizing that the plate in front of me, although it seemed not nearly as good as just my mom's home cooked meal, is a $2,000 plate, right? And that was just, we were talking earlier, that was just Wednesday. Yeah. You know what I mean? So life is a little bit different, but then you realize other things, right? It's just a different perspective. My dad came from inner city Atlanta. So while he was able to provide a nice life for his family, he didn't forget where he came from. He wanted to raise me a certain way. So he had an obligation, he had a duty with the role and responsibility he was in to make time for those folks, because those folks were helping pay his salary. I think that's lost on some guys that are in the NBA currently. We won't get into that.
Yeah.
But it was just life for me. So growing up, I did get perks. I had a Sprint contract early high school because my dad was doing some stuff. You all know how you pay your bills here. So I had my own line and account, and I didn't even know what to do with the cell phone at that time. We were carrying around the flip phones that didn't take great pictures, so it wasn't that fun to carry around anyway. So there's definitely some perks going on vacations. One of the best things is the NBA has their player association, and they take trips in the summer. And so one of my favorite things to do was when they take those summer trips, they go to beautiful places all over the world. I just got to see the other players. And it was funny because my dad was always my favorite player when we go on those trips because he was the best. Mm-hmm. He was the best, right? And Julius Erving with those massive hands would come up and shake my hand, and I'm like, man, Dr. J, I'm still taking my dad. Charles Barkley would come over, Auburn alum. Both of them went to Auburn, and he's like, hey, you're going to Auburn when you get older? And I'm like, yes. And he walk away. And I'm like, love you, Dad. But back then I wanted to go to UT. And as time passed, I remember shaking this ball. Well, at this time, he actually had hair. Guy's hand. He was about 6'6", about 210, 15 pounds. Jump out of the gym, if y'all know where I'm going. I remember shaking his hand, and I looked back at my dad, and I said, can you be like 1A favorite player? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, because this guy right here, he's kind of special, right? He's only in his second year in the league, but I'm like, he is special. I was a young Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And that was the first time my dad had to tell me okay. And swallow his pride a little bit. My mom told me as I got older that he wasn't quite happy with that. But those are just things growing up that perspective, right? I didn't know that what it was until I started getting older and I started being able to appreciate some of those opportunities that being the son of an NBA player is. But it also comes with some responsibility, right? I had to be careful, especially as I got older, what I said in public. I remember having a friend in Houston, and once again, we'll keep their name off the show, but he got in trouble. And I remember in the headlines, it was son of ... Oh,
wow.
And I had to start thinking like, yes, in San Antonio at that time, before social media, the police were going to make sure I was okay. but also if they couldn't hide it, it wasn't going to reflect on me. It was going to reflect on him. So the small bit of things that I had to be careful for, the greater advantage, especially in this town, it outweighed it. It outweighed it.
Did your dad, you mentioned Auburn, that's Alabama, you're from Atlanta. Was there like a Southern values thing that he tried to instill?
100%.
Okay, tell me about Southern values and being from the South.
Well, and that's part of what he was, right? So you work hard, right? You earn your keep. You are respectful, and you treat everybody with kindness, right? And that's where he started off life, humble beginnings. If he had something, it didn't matter if it was a piece of bread. If you wanted half, you could have half, right? Did that mean my mom was a little upset as he started making money and folks would come and they'd be like, hey, we want to start this barbershop? And he's like, sure. Yeah, it made her a little upset sometimes because he kept that attitude. But on the flip side, right, you already knew what you were going to get with Mike Mitchell. And he expected that out of me, right? So meeting people as we were growing, there was none of that. You see that little arrogance that some kids can have. I didn't have that opportunity. And at 6'7", 225, to me, when I was a little kid, I wasn't going to argue or fight back when he was trying to instill those things in me, those Southern values. And I think that played well all the way for him into his NBA career, right? People knew that you're going to get a hardworking man that wasn't going to talk a lot, that was going to treat everybody with respect everywhere he went. It's not a coincidence that he ended up in San Antonio, right? It's definitely not a coincidence.
Amazing. Talking to Mike Mitchell Jr., son of Mike Mitchell, passed away back in 2011, had a battle with cancer. You've talked a lot about him, and I'm sure it's difficult to go back in time and remember that. Well, we all love our fathers, and he passed away more than a decade ago. But if there's something that rubbed off on you the most, where you look back and go, that's a part of my dad and me, what is that?
I wish I could say it was that turnaround jump shot on the baseline, because this might be a whole different interview. My love for people definitely came from him. Let me tell you a fun story. My dad had a Bronco, and not a white Bronco. He had a Bronco, and he loved that Bronco. And we were driving around in it after he got it. He met some guys and they said, hey, we've got this shop. We can hook up your Bronco. We can do some stuff to it. He's like, we can make it look wonderful. My dad was like, sure, let's do it. And so went with those guys, and he comes and gets me. He says, hey, they're gonna switch out our Bronco. I want you to meet these guys, everything like that. And I'm like, okay, wonderful. So my dad goes back, and they decked his Bronco out. They switched out his engine, dual exhaust on it, lifted it up, put 35-inch tires, which were big back then. I think you have to go like 40 inches now. Looked wonderful, right? And my dad was happy. And he's like, they did a better job than I expected. So he's like, hey, everybody that works in this shop, what are y'all doing tomorrow? And they're like, oh, we're just coming to work. He's like, can y'all close down? Right? So he went out and got barbecue. Or actually went out and got meat and barbecued for all of them.
Wow.
My dad was like, if you're sitting at the bar and you're drinking and he comes up beside you, you can have anything you want. You're going to drink with him all night as long as it's tequila, because of San Antonio.
Yeah.
So he went out and got a couple bottles of tequila, and they just had a blast, right? And I'm like, why did you do that? He goes, they went a little bit above and beyond for me. Simple as it is for me, I need to go a little bit above and beyond for them, right? And it was great to see not just him telling me that, but I got a chance to see it play out in real life, right? How do you walk away from that? How do I change? How do I turn my back on that? I just couldn't. That's my father, who literally is larger than life for me at that point, right? And he's doing that to people out in the community. It made me want to be the same way. I used to tell people I'm not going into nonprofit, because I was a business management major in school, right? I was playing basketball and going to school. I was like, I'm going to get out of school and I'm either going to the league or I'm going to go make a ton of money for a Fortune 500 company. I've been in nonprofit ever since I left college. Well, when I wasn't playing basketball.
Yeah. Talking about your dad, I'm looking at his numbers here. Career, 19.8 points per game.
We can say 20.
Yeah, well, I'll round up to 20. I'll round up to 6 rebounds per game. What is his player comp of the 90s and today?
Who's a workman style efficient scorer?
I hate to say it. Is it Was there shades of LaMarcus Aldridge?
Definitely.
Not as tall, but
there's certain things that you hear about LaMarcus that you used to hear about my dad. So he wasn't somebody you had to worry about, right? Strong. Everybody that saw, I had the benefit of being in practices for other teams. I worked in a gym, and we used to host the visiting teams. And teams would come in and say, we got to attack LaMarcus early and get him off his game so we don't have to worry about him later as the game goes. But don't be fooled by his demeanor. He's probably the strongest guy on the court. If you let him get to his spots, you're in trouble. And they used to love his work on the baseline, right? He had that mid-range jump shot. He could hit it from anywhere, but they're like, if he gets you on his back on the baseline, you're in trouble. I go to my dad. When we go on those trips, people are like, you don't understand how strong your dad is. He's one of the strongest guys out there on the court, you know? Baseline, you could forget about it. If he caught that ball in his spots, you can forget about it, right? You're just hoping he misses that shot. And he never talked a lot. Didn't have a lot to say. Went about his best. Now you found him off the court. He had a lot to say. You know, family guy. He had a lot to say. But yeah, there's some parallels there.
Now you said you didn't have to worry about him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 80s, baby. This is. I mean, we saw that with the Spurs. We talked about Gervin. We talked about Banks and your dad and Johnny Moore and all those guys. The one name that we didn't bring up was Alvin Robertson, because Alvin Robertson, one of the few players in NBA history to have a quadruple double, still has the all-time steals record. I think 301 steals in a season. That'll never be broken. Not only is he number one, he's also number two. Not only is he number two, he's also number three. I think 4 of the 7 seasons all time, most steals were him, but he got himself in trouble. Did your dad ever talk to you about, I'm not going to say a specific player, but like avoiding trouble back then?
Definitely. Can I tell a funny story?
Yeah.
So Alvin Robinson, if y'all have ever seen him, he's built like this, right? Even as he got older and gained weight and stuff, he's still like just strong. And he grew up, went up north and stuff, started learning how to wrestle. So, you know, guys are with each other all year round. And let's be real, you're playing a kid's game as a profession, as a job. You're going to have some immature moments. Let's just throw it out there. And so they were on a team bus, right? And Alvin was sitting behind my dad, and they used to always mess with each other. And, you know, they'd hit each other in the back of the head, and it'd start like a little tussle. And then, you know, guys would chill out because they're just teammates. It wasn't anything serious. My dad didn't play those kind of games. And him and Alvin were just getting to know each other at that point. And so Alvin did it to my dad. And my dad said, listen, I don't play the little fighting games. You know, I either fight for real or I don't fight. So you keep doing that, you're going to be in trouble. And Alvin, who's not one to back down from anybody, decided he was going to do it again on the team bus. Now, mind you, I was told this story by Gene Banks and Artis Gilmore. That wasn't told this story by my dad. So apparently he did it again, and my dad reached back, grabbed Alvin on the team bus, slammed him against the roof. Now, this is a grown man. Slammed him against the roof, brought him over the seat, slammed him on the floor, and was like, if you're done, I'll let you up. If you still want to play, you can hit that top roof again. That was the last time that Alvin played with my dad. Here's the funny thing about Alvin. He was one of my favorites. Right? Just a great guy. His stats that you threw out, I don't know if anybody will be able to reach that because the game has changed. Defense isn't, you can't play defense the same way. And his upper body strength allowed him to channel people in directions to make some of those steals. But phenomenal hand speed, quickness, strength. I got to see that firsthand, you know, growing up. And then also with his son, a few years younger than me, as we started playing in different things that we're in the same district and stuff, I'd go around, see his dad from time to time, still had it, right? Could step off of a construction site in some boots, get on the court, and you're not going by him, right?
And it wasn't so much that he picked pockets. He was just in passing lanes.
Oh,
he knew where you were going.
Try to throw that pass if you want.
By the way, have some video here, Joe, of Mike Mitchell Sr. Look at this. Western Conference Finals, CBS Sports, courtesy of CBS Sports, back in the 80s, live from the Hemisphere Arena.
Man,
you know, it had
those shorts.
17,000 fans out there. Only 16,500 could actually see the court because of all the obstructed view. But see your dad work his magic here against Magic, picking Magic pocket right there. Actually, that was Cooper. Look at that. 15-footer. Before there was Willie Anderson in the 15-footer, there was your dad with the 15-footer. I like looking at this.
In that NBA, like 83s would lead the league for a season. Can you believe a guy shooting 80 and leading the league now? What do you have to shoot, like 400, 500 threes to lead the league in attempts?
Exactly. It was a different game, and it was also further away, if I wasn't mistaken.
Yeah, a little bit further away.
You look at the stat lines, and you go, okay, well, he was a 28% shooter. It was 2 feet further out. It wasn't 19-9 like it is now, or 26. But look at some of these plays, just glides. He had some ups. God, I used to hate Kurt Rambis. Take him. There you go, man. Hated Kurt Rambis growing up. So did you have a second team that you cheered for other than the Spurs growing up?
Not growing up. No. I'm a player guy, right? So
yeah.
I loved to watch the game. So I would cheer for players. It was hard to hate Magic as much as he stood in the way of the Spurs. It was hard to. I mean, that guy that y'all see on TV, the laughing, the smile, that's Magic.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in a game and my dad was in the stands. We were watching the Spurs in the Alamo Dome days.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like that, by the way.
Over Kareem and won. Woo! And won. Spurs still, they lost the series in 6, if I'm not mistaken.
You forget about it. He gets there. It's a done deal.
I mean, what a lineup. Johnny Moore. There's the A train right there.
All of them were all-star nominees. The whole starting lineup and the 6-man, if I'm not mistaken.
Going 6 games to the Western Conference Finals against a team that had Worthy and Scott and Kareem, and when arguably Byron Scott's your worst starter. I mean, come on, man. Byron Scott was a special player himself. This is a different game, man.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're watching this together. This is great.
Yeah, we can't watch too much of it, though, because they'll come down on us for it.
Oh, CBS Sports doesn't play basketball anymore. Come on.
Hey, but the thing is, we got to bring up this, man. Tall tale time from Mike. I don't know if you heard this or not.
Oh, yeah. So I tell these stories. I'm the Forrest Gump of San Antonio. I've been at places that have been a little bit odd.
I don't know if you're going to believe this one or not.
Okay. So back in the late 90s, I used to work out. Back in the day when I used to work out a lot more than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work out at Racquetball and Fitness,
mm-hmm.
and they used to have one near the medical center, which is now a Gold's Gym on Callahan and Evers.
I know the one.
Or Callahan and Babcock. So back in the day, it had a big indoor basketball court,
mm-hmm.
and it was nice. And there was a day in the late 90s or so where I'm there at 2 a.m, and a bunch of NBA players walk in.
Mm-hmm.
It was Tim Duncan. It was Antonio Daniels, and then you saw some players from other teams show up, maybe 6 or 7 players,
mm-hmm.
right? They wanted to run 5.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working out over there, and they're looking for other players, and they asked me if I want to run with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dream come true for most people, right? It frightened me, and I said no.
Okay.
And the reason why I said no was because Tim Duncan was there, and I didn't want him to step on. I didn't want to Zaza Pachulia him.
You didn't want to hurt him with this killer defense.
No. I didn't want my clumsiness to hurt him. So I said no. They got other guys from the gym. They ended up running 5, and I ended up watching them play. But I didn't want to be that guy who hurt him because I was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
They believe that that's all BS. I'm telling you, it's a true story. Do you believe me, or do you believe the viewers that it's BS?
I believe the viewers.
I know it to be a fact. I have been with guys. I don't know that situation to be a fact. I know it's a fact that you go sometimes, and NBA guys will go wanting to play. And if there's not enough, we will go looking for other folks just to come join the run. There was a run and shoot for a while off Callahan, I think, right there by 10. I can't remember the name. But in that gym, they had 3 courts. There was another one. Yeah. There's another, or was it home court? Home court.
Yes, home court. Yeah.
There's another one. I think it's the same one. It was our Full Life, and then it became something else, and it's like a Gold's now.
Yeah.
But same thing, right? If there's not enough, you've got 8. It's like, let's go find 2 from in the gym. And typically, you should have played. Because they would have put you out on the island, you would have had that as a great story. But they would have ran away from you like the plague, right? Because they're not trying to get hurt in games like that. But it does happen, and right, there's a risk anytime you step on the court. So I'll give that. I'll give that 75% chance it happened.
So what I'm saying, I'll take it. What I didn't want though is because I didn't hurt his ankle, right? I deserve at least one of those rings.
Okay,
the 99 one I deserve. But this was before they had won any. But it's funny when you see these players who work out with each other and they're not from the same city. And it's almost like it's a friendly fraternity, if you will. You go to the Rocket La Cantera, doesn't mean that they're all going to be Spurs there. There might be a player from a different team who just happens to be friends, maybe gets permission. Can I work out over here? But then in the off season, a lot of them are friends. Let me ask you this question real fast. I'm a high school basketball official. I officiate 5A and 6A varsity. May not look like it, but I do. Okay. And they called me yesterday to join the association again. I was going to take this year off, and they're like, nope, we need you. So I'm back. That being said, we have a thing going on in the NBA right now where there have been several seasons in a row. Not one player in the 2020s has won the MVP that's American. So the 2020s might go the entire decade because Doncic is playing so well, and he might win one. Because SGA might win one. Wemby might win a couple. Could you imagine a full decade of non-American players winning the MVP? What do you think is going on there?
I think the momentum from the NBA game has carried, right? So when you go overseas, and I had the ability to, because of my father, go at a young age, these arenas overseas were 7,000 fans, 6,000 fans. Now you go to a soccer game and there's 60,000, 80,000 people there. But basketball, it wasn't like that. Skill wise, they work out differently. Over here you have one big practice. Over there, it was like 3 practices, right? Because they're working on one skill and one practice, another skill. Then they're coming together as a team to practice. So they were coming with the skills already, but it's like getting the popularity. It wasn't out there. You go over there now and you've got 15,000, 17,000, 18,000 in these stadiums, and Inter Milan is throwing in a whole bunch of money into these other areas, right? And so these teams are just getting huge. And so then you've got more and more guys willing to take that step. Guys, Peja Stojakovic,
Sacramento. Oh, wait, no. Peja was
Sacramento.
I was thinking of Drazen with
Petrovic
with the Nets.
You think of guys like that, they were coming over here to be a 6-man. Luka knew day one he's coming in to be a starter, right? Not because the skill sets weren't there back then, but because the popularity of the game, people didn't know it like that. We weren't scouting over there like that, and now we are. Now those guys are comfortable to come over here and play and show what they can do. And then you got to think, though, that's an elite player, right? Because I say pound for pound, NBA is still the best league. A 12-man NBA team is going to be better than a 12-man German team, Italian team, typically, right? Any given night, people can lose, but you're going to find more talent on that NBA roster. But the disparity, that gap is closing quickly.
I think the humility is the issue. I think AAU is killing the sport. And the humility of Wemby doesn't need to be the star. Wemby wants to be a star. Luka doesn't need to score 35, 40 points. Nikola Jokic appears to not even like playing basketball half the time. They buy into team success. And I think that a lot of the stars that are American buy into their brand. And AAU, the reason why I say killing it is because they get to pick and choose who their teammates are, as opposed to like when your dad was battling. I don't think your dad would want to have joined the Lakers because he wanted to beat the Lakers. It wasn't like Kevin Durant when he would jump ship and went over to Golden State. That's the difference. There was a competitive fire. On top of that, American players go from middle school to high school to college. Over there, they're like, screw that. Your profession is a basketball player, and you're playing against 30-year-old big-bodied players from the get-go.
Right.
Yeah.
Doncic is ready to go.
Right.
Parker was ready to go.
We've never talked you on this show about Sarunas Marciulionis.
Oh, Sarunas, yeah.
And you know what he was? He was actually the first Soviet-born player to play in the NBA. And that was back in 1989. He played with the Golden State Warriors. And I remember seeing him play with the Golden State Warriors and the Warriors going against the Spurs. And I was watching this guy, decimate the Spurs coming off the bench. I'm like, who is this guy? Look at the way he's playing. Sarunas Marciulionis, dude. He had that Euro step. He could shoot the ball. I was like, look at this guy go, man. That's like, I was kind of envious of the guy. He was like, I guess one of the first Soviet-born, of course, NBA player, but one of the guys that I took a notice to coming from the Euro League and whatnot. I was like, man, he's a great six man coming off that bench.
They take the right shot. I think that's part of it. I think the culture is you take the right shot as opposed to find your shot.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe
over here we're doing skills work, and you go to any gym in America and you watch them doing skills work. Guys are catching the ball, dribbling, going between their legs, behind the back, spin move, just to get a shot off. That's great, right? That's wonderful if you have that ability. But you don't have to do that every time. If you catch the ball and you're open, shoot the ball, right? You go overseas and you watch them practicing from 5'10" to 7 foot. They're shooting 5-foot shots. Then they're shooting 7-foot shots. They're going all the way out to the 3-point line. Everybody on the team is shooting those shots.
It's like watching the movie Hoosiers come to life.
It really is.
Is Hoosiers the best basketball movie of all time, or is it White Men Can't Jump?
White Men Can't Jump teaches you more life lessons. I will say that.
We got an incoming super chat from the Drew Show here for you, Mike.
Says Drew Show with the $5 tip saying some assistant coach must have been there right after that encounter with Mike at Racquetball and Fitness. The Spurs built their first practice facility. Very nice, man. It was a pleasure having you on today, man. What are you working on these days?
So I am working with United Way these days. Every time I tell people that, they go, is that the bank or is that an airline? We raise money in the community, $47 million last year, and we direct that money right back into the community to try to help people. I serve on the impact side, so I run a community coalition that's circled around making sure kids 0 to 8 have everything they need for success, set them up for success in life early, and it'll pay dividends later on as they age.
And I'm sure it's a tax deduction if you donate, right?
100% it is. 100%.
Yeah,
we're running a campaign right now, so if you
what do you guys need?
What are you doing? Yeah.
Is it just money? So
basically, right? So the benefit of giving to United Way, since y'all opened up that door, we've got guidelines set in place. So giving to nonprofits as a whole is a good thing, right? Giving back to your community is great. Giving it to United Way, though, we're making sure it's a collective impact approach that benefits the whole community. I liken it to like Sam's or Costco, right? You can go places and you can get stuff directly from them. Mom and pop stores, they have great stuff. HEB, has great stuff, but you go to Sam's or Costco, and those dollars are going to go a lot longer, right? A lot further. So we do that. We get together with programs. We make agencies that normally maybe not speak. We sit them around the table, we let them talk, share best practices, and we make sure that they have the tools that they need, and also funding sometimes to secure those programs so they can benefit the community.
And how did you get into this?
My dad. So he started his own nonprofit, NICER, National Institute Sobriety, Education, Rehab, and Recovery, after he retired. And really he was doing preventative work. And what he found doing that work was that you had to start upstream. You had to start getting kids before they developed those bad habits and turned into adults making wrong decisions. So he started his nonprofit. I was still playing, bouncing around from Mexico, Israel, Italy at that time. And then once I retired, during that time in the summers, he'd make me come out with this program. And then after I retired, he made sure that I started and got invested in the work he was doing. And unfortunately, he got sick after that and lost it. But that stayed with me. So I transitioned, like I said, over to Antioch, running our gym, doing after school programming for boys. And then I bounced over to United Way. So I blame him for me getting into that work. But definitely there's a need there, and we're trying to meet those needs.
Is this the website right here?
Yes, sir.
So it's www.uwsatx.org. Again, that's uwsatx.org. Shows ways that you can volunteer, you can give money, or you can get help. Talk about they need jackets for the winter and all those different things. Again, uwsatx.org. Dude, we appreciate you being with us today, man.
Oh,
The
my
chat
pleasure.
loves him,
Amazing.
man. The chat loves him. They want him back.
Yeah, I don't mind. He actually lives in the area.
Yeah.
So he lives out in the SeaWorld area. So very, very nice. But no, we've enjoyed it. It's nice to have a conversation with somebody who has a different type of perspective and experience. What I got out of today's conversation, some of the bullet points I got, other than the fact that you like Stephon Castle, like you think he's ready to go, but from your dad, number 34 needs to be up in the rafters. I truly believe that. I've said that from the get-go. Was a big fan. That has to be honored because before David, believe it or not, the Spurs existed before David Robinson, and that was called, they did, right? So that was very interesting. Talking about how your dad instilled the Southern values was amazing. Everything from your childhood growing up and how your life was different, like you mentioned, being on the back or the passenger seat of a Porsche, and meeting all of these different people and meeting Michael Jordan and all that. I think it was fantastic.
Hey, we got some breaking news too.
What do we got?
Got to pour some out for Danny Green, man. Announced he's retiring from the league.
Danny Green, former Spur, followed. Didn't he follow Kawhi Leonard? Is that where he was going?
Yeah, over in Toronto. He played over there in Toronto with Kawhi, won a chip over there. And right now, ESPN, about an hour ago, finally broke the news. Sure, it was with Shams. And they said that Danny Green says he's retiring from the league after 15 seasons.
Look at this career, man. Started in 2009 with the Cleveland Cavaliers, just like your dad. Played for the Spurs in 2010, played for the Spurs from 2011 to 2018, was in line to win the MVP award at the 2013 NBA Finals, but Ray Allen ruined that one. Went on to play with Toronto, won a chip over there, played for the Lakers, Sixers, Grizzlies, went back to the Cavaliers, then the Phillies, the 76ers rather. 3-time NBA champion, 2014, 18, 19, and 20 rather. All NBA defensive second team with the Spurs. I don't know, man. I don't know, because if we're going to retire, not including your dad, Patty Mills or Danny Green?
That's a tough one, man.
That's a toss-up.
That's a tough one. It's too close to call. Since we can't call it, I'd say none. Nil. But you know who else is retiring as well? And it was announced. I don't know if you saw that or not, Mike. Your favorite there, Rafael Nadal, announced he's retiring from tennis at the end of the year.
Wow, Rafael Nadal, one of the greatest to ever play. That 3-horse race right there between Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. Nadal was a clay court king. No one has ever won any more French Open titles than he has over at Roland Garros. All-time great. It was paper, rock, scissors. It was paper, rock, scissors. He had Federer's number.
Yeah.
Right? But Djokovic had Nadal's number. Yeah. And it was just like paper, rock, scissors. It was kind of like boxing back in the 80s, with Sugar Ray Leonard and Hagler and Hearns. Like it was about who you're fighting. It was a matchup battle between them all.
Styles.
But the styles made the matchup. That's amazing. Prayers to those in Florida, by the way, because of impacted by Hurricane Milton. My friend Joel is literally right now on his way driving back to his house to see if it's going to be there. He lived off the coast of Tampa in an area called Ruskin, Apollo Beach area. He's like, Michael, they had 10 inches of rain and the storm surge, and he's maybe about a mile from the water. He's going to go back and see what his life is looking like. So prayers out to those out there. I know they reported 4 deaths due to a tornado that outbreak that happened over there. So if you have friends or family over there, check up on them. But it was amazing having you here today. Hopefully this is not the last time. If you want to give your perspective on Spurs, man, we'll reach out to each other. And regular season starts 2 weeks from tomorrow against the Dallas Mavericks on the road. First game in San Antonio on the 26th. Back-to-back games against the Houston Rockets. That's Saturday and Monday. Dude, it was a pleasure having you here.
My pleasure.
Thank you to everybody on the Super Chats, by the way. We had Super Chats from Drew Show and Mario Cavazos.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that and for all of those. Hit the like button on the way out the door, by the way, fellas. And we're going to be back tomorrow. I'm Mike Jimenez. That's Mike Mitchell Jr., dude. And that is Joe Garcia. We'll be back tomorrow.